to the Tech for Good podcast. This is the HR Tech season, and I am joined today by Tyler Weeks, who is Head of Partnership and Strategy at HiredScore. Did you make up that title yourself?
Yeah, actually, there was a bag of words, and I just started pulling out. I grabbed the first two and put them together, and that was my title.
That's the last title you would think a career data scientist would end up with. It's been an interesting road for you. I can see here a lot of data science in your education, a lot of nerdy stuff early on, and then you ended up in the HR tech world. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's I have no idea. I have this working theory that if you are, unless you're like a dentist or an accountant, nobody's career path is linear. We
Yeah.
all just sort of like tell the story like it all meant to happen, but really we're just sort of like running into things and changing direction. I'm actually a physicist by training. I started my career studying lasers and worked actually at a hospital. I did my research at a hospital. Um, and you know, I I was a good number of years into my career doing R&D, really heads down, like hard technical work. And what I kept getting fascinated with was how our company ran, like why people were making certain decisions, why people chose to come and work at our company. I kept coming back to this question, even though I was studying electrons and photons and
Yeah.
other things. Like people were just so interesting to me because we're just so weird. Like we make
Yeah.
weird decisions, we say weird things. So like, how do you understand people?
Yeah.
So about 5 years into that career, I got this idea that I was going to go study people, and I did some networking and found a job in HR running a talent acquisition team.
So
And
let me
literally,
take you back a step.
yeah,
So a physicist, an artist, and a poet,
yeah.
they don't walk into a bar together, do they?
I guess they don't. I can't. I don't know what I am. I'm just me. I love getting creative, and I actually don't see. I don't use a different muscle to go solve complex math problems as I do to go paint or to write. To me, there's this element of creativity around problem solving that gives me a big high. I love tackling a challenging problem. And I like to kind of express that lots of different ways. So
Well, it's going to take a lot of Mensa level people to be able to solve all the problems that we have in recruitment uh,
yeah,
in HR tech. So walk me through that early journey of getting into this industry.
yeah. So every person I respected told me I was an idiot. Why would you leave this career that you've got doing technical work to go work in HR of all places, HR. And to be fair, my only understanding of HR at the time was Toby from The Office. And so
Yeah.
I was a little bit nervous about it myself. So I jumped into this TA team running talent acquisition for manufacturing. And I I was really challenged with these recruiters. Like, what do they do? Why do they do this? What gives them satisfaction? And I just spent a whole year just learning talent acquisition. That's all I cared about. How do recruiters talk to hiring managers? And oh, actually, they're selling candidates to hiring managers as much as they're selling the company to candidates. And like there was this whole like interaction happening, and it didn't matter that we found the best software developer in the world if the hiring manager didn't like him. So like what how do you like this whole problem was really interesting to me. So I spent a year just focus like in the school of talent acquisition. And at the end of that, I got asked to join. We had this small analytics team
Okay.
in TA. And I got asked to join that because now I was kind of this weird combo of like, I understood talent acquisition, but I was also this physicist slash data scientist. And I joined that team, and I quickly realized that one cool thing about talent acquisition is everybody cares. The CEO cares, the board cares, everybody cares about what talent you're bringing and how quickly you're bringing them in. And so I had this like platform to go think about all of the problems at our company. Like, how do we
Recruiters
go?
love change, don't they?
What's that?
Recruiters, they love change and they love changing their process, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to go look at like, well, how do we help them be better? How do we go like push the company forward? And when I would talk to recruiters, they all had these like scars on their backs of all of these systems that everyone had bought, and like none of them did the thing that they were promised. And like recruiter hell was like 17 tabs open in their browser,
Yeah.
and for all the things that their company bought, and they're being monitored on adoption of all of them. And so,
Yeah.
they're like hopping back and forth, and sometimes they're copying and pasting things to like make the other one work. And in the end, they were just using actually like an Excel file and a bunch of Outlook folders to do all their work, and then just like logging into systems so that they got credit for logging into the system, right? And it was just kind of this insane mess of like tools, but like not really helping them, right?
Yeah. And in this moment, are you tasked with finding new tools? Are you finding with building one, or what's the mandate at this stage? Or are you still purely in research and then you try and influence? What? Because your
Yeah,
role
so
grew over time, didn't it?
yeah, so I one of the things that I loved about HiredScore, and the because I was candidly I was a client before I joined the company, um, is that it was a like the way the obsession and the focus on how recruiters actually work, what their workflow looks like, how they make decisions, what information they need to go confidently go to a hiring manager.
Mm.
That was sort of front and center. That is the at the beginning and the end of what HiredScore is doing. So and
So
HiredScore was
explain to me what did that there flow from advertisement to closing that requisition look like before hired score, and what did it look like with hired score?
yeah, that's a great question. So you know you would as a recruiter, right? Recruiters are they're an interesting bunch because if you ask them what it is they love about their job, almost every recruiter will start talking about people. They'll talk about a hiring manager that loved the work they did.
Yeah.
They'll talk about a candidate whose like life they changed that called them crying and like there's this like very human piece to the recruiters that love what they do. They love the people. And but there's this like thing that happens where they get stuck focused so much on process and on administrative tasks that their time in front of people gets very limited. So that workflow would typically be like I go into my ATS and a hiring manager goes into a tool, requests a rec, they might put in some descriptions and some minimum qualifications. That shows up to a recruiter who creates the rec in the ATS, and then they maybe have an intake meeting if they've got time, but really they own like 30 recs. And, so they shoot the hiring manager an email instead. They get a little bit of feedback. They post a rec, and then they just start collecting applicants, right? And they're being told they should go source passive candidates. But if you go into LinkedIn or into the ATS or CRM and I pull out candidates, like maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 20 will actually apply. So rather than do that, I'm going to save myself some time and I'll just wait another week to get some more applicants. And then we'll just start kind of sifting applicants and, giving those to the hiring manager. And that's the flow that actually kind of happens in spite of
And then
this like,
there's bad guys like me calling all the best candidates and send them to the hiring manager, and I call them, here, come on, we'll go for drinks. It's fine. It's fine. Here's a great candidate.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that human piece that like recruiters really want to do, and
Yeah.
good ones find time to do, but they're so challenged by just the overhead of how long it takes. I'll tell you, there was some benchmarking that we did that if you go use the search functionality in your standard ATS,
Yeah.
it'll take you about 3.5 hours to find 8 good qualified passive leads. 3.5 hours, because you go do a search, you got to go through the results, then it's not in any particular order.
Yeah.
So like if I own 30 recs, like, and I want to do passive sourcing, that's my full-time job. Like I don't have time to be a full lifecycle recruiter and source, right? Like
Yeah.
so where HiredScore kind of short-circuited a lot of that and really sort of enabled our recruiters is HiredScore is built in AI. We've been in this business for 8-9 years now, and we focus very heavily not on a black box match, like this candidate, it would be a good fit for your role, but on understanding the language of talent acquisition. So when a hiring manager writes, I need 3 to 5 years of marketing experience or equivalent, that statement doesn't mean anything, right? Like if you're just pulling out keywords using some like parser, that doesn't give you any information about what that means. So a recruiter has to apply all their knowledge, all their understanding from the hiring manager and go do the search themselves. HiredScore has built its technology to understand what that means. When a hiring manager at your company in this country at this seniority level says, I need this amount of experience or equivalent, what is stored in that equivalent statement? And because we understand that at a deep level, not just based on keywords, but based on equivalency, so that we can start to remove some of that human bias out of the system, right? That says, I'm only looking for people that have degrees in creative writing or comparative literature. Well, you probably also would consider somebody that did gender studies or African American studies, which are heavy writing degrees. You just don't even know to look at them.
Right.
So we can go and we can inject that or sort of help to mitigate some of that bias because we understand what 3 to 5 years or equivalent means. Now, where that helps my recruiter.
How did you understand that?
So we're
getting real down the rabbit hole now.
Yeah. I do want to get back to the recruiters, but we do two things when we engage a client. First, we use about 3 years of their hiring data to understand the language they use for talent acquisition at their company, right? What do you mean by a marketing manager? What do you mean by supply chain analyst? What do you mean by firmware engineer? And again, at all those sort of different divisions or segmentations of country, seniority, business unit, all those things. We also have an anonymized global version of that model that looks across all our clients and understands, okay, when people say marketing manager, what are all the different versions of that? And what does that mean in terms of not just skills or keyword skills, but in terms of experience level, in terms of education, in terms of can we understand what those roles and what those candidates actually mean when they say these words? So we engineer that. We've built our own proprietary parser so that we could do this not just in English, but we do this in Mandarin, French, Spanish. We understand the difference, and not just by language, but for example, in India, CVs are very different than in the US. They tend to be 20 pages long. If you just apply the same scrutiny that the same rules or ideas that you'd use to an American resume to an Indian CV, you would totally misunderstand the experience of this person. So we localize. We have a global solution with localized optimization. So we really understand India. We really understand China. We really understand France. We understand Canadian French as opposed to European French. So we go and we optimize for that. What that allows recruiters to do is, as applicants apply, so we can take that core technology and do a couple things with it. For one, we can, as applicants apply, we can help sort them based on who's qualified, not just a generic or black box who is most likely to get hired, because that's where some bias has come into the system in the past, but who meets the qualifications that were actually listed in the rec. And we can actually explain to you in terms of how the rec was written, why this person is qualified, right? So you can start at the top and know that you're getting people that are qualified for the job, right? Um, the other thing we can go do with that same core technology is we can go search your ATS, your CRM, your VMS, your HCM, anywhere that you have a talent pool and you've got resumes or profiles of candidates, we can surface automatically. Remember I said it takes 3.5 hours to find eight
Yeah.
candidates? We can do that automatically. As soon as the rec opens, we can find 8 to 10, again, qualified candidates. So people that meet the qualifications listed in the rec
Yeah.
that you can reach out to. So we can help you with that passive hiring.
So it's just like, in Star Trek, like the Borg, and the Borg is going through the planetary system and it's getting bigger and bigger. Is that what you guys are like with data? Every time you get more data, your machine gets smarter.
I let's stay away from the Borg. That's a little sinister. I mean, I would hate for someone to log into any HR system and just get a message that says resistance is futile. Like that is not the intent. I would say this, that there's an important element here that I have relied on over the years that I've been in this space. And that is algorithms make recommendations, humans make decisions. So when it comes to hiring decisions, that should be a human doing that. Now, a human, there's a thing called Dunbar's number. I don't know if you are familiar with Dunbar's number.
No, tell me about it.
Dunbar's number basically says that your brain, the average human brain, can handle about 150 relationships. We've got 150 slots in there to manage like all the people that we know, right? Half of them are probably taken up by friends and family. And then at work, there's another half that are probably taken up by, colleagues, managers, like just the network of people that you've got to manage to be good at your job, which leaves you as a recruiter with about 30 slots for people, right? Now I've got to go I've got 30 slots in my head to really go develop relationships with. Now, I think technology, especially ethical technology, is doing its best job, not when it's telling you who to hire, but when it's helping you prioritize who to put in those slots. Who needs my time? Who are the candidates that are qualified or important for my company that I should really be going developing relationships with? So it's not the Borg. It's not taking humanity out of the recruiting process. It's helping you focus and go do what humans do best and be a human in front of other humans, right? Like go build. Robots are terrible at being friends. Yeah. You know who's good at it? People. So it's about helping people do what they do best. And if you go look, I think the biggest risk we have in talent acquisition right now is not robots suddenly looking like people or doing the jobs of people. It's people doing the jobs of robots. Like if you go look at recruiters,
you're not a robot saying that. This is robot pop propaganda right now.
Yeah. It's people acting like robots. The number of mouse clicks that a recruiter has to do, the average recruiter has to do at an in-house recruiting team to manage your ATS, your compliance, your offer development, it's in the hundreds, if not thousands, of like things they need to remember to click every time. Now, every time you're doing those clicks, those are things, that automation, that recruiting automation that like should be helping a human go from one very like human task seamlessly to the next human task. That's where there's opportunity, right?
So, what does this look like for the future then? If I'm a TA person listening to this, this technology sounds unbelievable. I'm guessing it's mainly at the enterprise level, and as we go down, I'm sure it'll be available to SMEs and small businesses. And there's lots of other progressive technology out there. What does the future of the talent acquisition look like? When they go in, what is their job going to be? Is it going to be managing, like when you think of like employer branding, the sourcing, the hiring manager, all the stuff in it? What do you think their job looks like in 5 years' time, given the progression of technology in the last 5?
Yeah, I'll answer that question this way. I hear a lot of talk, and I've been in a lot of conversations about upskilling recruiters. We need to upskill recruiters. And there's this like funny thing that happens in that conversation where people start talking about like giving recruiters classes in machine learning and AI and data science. And to me, that makes no sense at all. Like
Me either.
I don't, to me, that's like, we don't need recruiters to become data scientists. That's not upskilling. That's career change, right? Like that's not the thing that we need them to go do. We have data scientists for that. I think that there's a new skill that needs to develop that is how a recruiter learns to comfortably partner with an AI that is helping them sort. And the reason that that's such a big shift for a recruiter's mindset is kind of baked into how they do their job today. So, Boolean strings, searches, how I go surface talent, that skill is so critical because a recruiter is not your average like internet user that is looking for a dog walker or looking for a coffee grinder, right?
Yeah.
Where a coffee grinder that can do these functions is good enough. You're looking for a Java developer that has developed very specific applications for a specific amount of time, maybe went to like specific schools, maybe you've got like goals around diversity at your company, maybe like there's so many parameters on what good talent looks like that you often have to resort to these complex search strings. And those search strings are almost like your personal IP as a recruiter. Like good recruiters sometimes will like hide or keep those search strings like private because it's like part of their recipe for success. Well, you don't, when you are search, like Google has gotten good enough in the search engine business, right? That is an AI. That is a machine learning algorithm that has gotten really good at understanding what it is you meant when you said, I'm looking for blah, 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 blah. When you use your GPS to get from point A to point B, oftentimes, even if you know how to get there, you'll turn on Waze. And why do you turn on Waze? Because Waze knows things that you don't. It understands that there's accidents ahead and maybe gives you the safest, fastest route, even if you thought you knew what it was. We've gotten very comfortable at interacting in our daily lives with machine learning AI algorithms that aren't sinister. They're not the Borg. They're ways that help us safely get there. I think the imperative around debiasing how we hire and getting to a world where diversity and inclusion is baked into how we hire and we're giving opportunities to the broadest swaths of people is going to require a Waze, like a Waze type partnership that helps us get there. So
let me ask you this. So I'm a novice to the diversity and inclusion topic. So for anybody who's listening, I apologize if I come across a little thick. When you're using an AI machine to debias the process, where does the balance come from having the best person for the job versus making sure that there's a balance in the different types of people? Is that something you write into the program, or how does that, like, what would you think happens in that scenario?
Again, so I'm not a legal expert on employment law, or I am not the consultant that you would use to untangle sort of both your ethical and legal obligations in whatever country you're in, right? Like that is a whole profession.
Yeah.
What I will say is that what technology can help us with is identifying where we don't even realize that we're systematically excluding folks from the process. And I'll give you a great example. HiredScore has a product where it's called our AI job writer. And given our understanding again of your talent, of your job requisitions, we can see where the qualifications you listed. So you said I needed 10 years of experience in as a marketing manager, blah, 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 blah. Like they need to know, how to use the Adobe suite, whatever that may, those qualifications that you listed. And in many countries, those qualifications are like get audited. Like, did you actually hire against, like, there's sort of like a legal obligation to those min quals, right? So let's say that you have the best marketing team in the world, right, at your company, and they go and they get every diverse candidate on the planet to apply. Let's say you're in the UK and you've got you have a mandate around hiring more technical women into your company, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you get every woman in the UK that's got 20 years of experience as a Java developer, applying to your job. Well, that doesn't do you any good if the hiring manager asked for 22 years of experience. You've just attracted all of this talent, but they can't even get through the front door because the definition of the job excluded them. So we can actually detect that, when we can make recommendations for you that say, hey, if you were to reduce the minimum qualifications on this job from 12 years to 10 years, you will unlock 20% more of the female applicants that apply, because for whatever reason, maybe they took time off to have children or whatever, they tend to have about 2 years less experience than their male counterparts. Now, that slight tweak of 12 years to 10 years is already something that a recruiter is doing with hiring managers, right? Like, you're kind of constantly helping them refine their search criteria to get the best result without compromising the quality, right? So going from 12 years to 10 years isn't impacting the quality. What it's impacting is who can even be considered for the job. So having those little insights into what's happening with even things that seem benign or seem straightforward, like the qualifications, are really important places to start with today's technology, and to go make a more equitable and fair process for people and create more opportunities. So then you're now looking at candidates that are qualified, that are equal in capability, and you've just broadened who you're able to consider.
You've talked a little bit before, I've heard, on nurturing and the infinity loop. Can you explain what the infinity loop is?
Yeah, so I was part of an amazing team. I was when I was at Intel, part of their TA team there, that was tasked with, how do we go get the most out of the talent that we're pulling in? Like, what's sort of like the optimal way to maximize on a limited budget? So we've got a fixed amount of money, and we've got to go drive the best talent result for Intel. And this model of the infinity loop was the product of really years of planning and years of strategizing and talking to the talent, the tech community in TA, and experts in recruitment marketing. And we had some brilliant people on our team. I'd call it a Lynn Bailey specifically, that really sort of gave the name to this infinity loop. I think the easiest way for me to think about it and contextualize it for your audience is the way that professional sports teams recruit. And here's why I think that's useful. I love looking at this. So if you look at a football team, whether it's a soccer or American football, right, or basketball or whatever it may be, those professional teams have lists of candidates that are in high school, or athletes that are in high school, and who are the top athletes, who's the fastest, who's the strongest, who's the tallest. Kind of, they have like the basic elements of what's going to make them a great athlete, but they're not going to hire them anytime soon. Like, they're just watching them, and they're slowly building relationships with them, or even early in their career. When a football team needs a goalie, nobody goes and opens a rec. Like
Yeah.
you won't see a rec for goalie for a Premier League team. They already know the 5 people that would fit with the members of their team, that their coaching staff likes, and that has the skills to be the goalie on that team. And so it's a matter of reaching out to them and activating them.
So
So,
kids, make sure your grades are good right now because Coca-Cola has the data. Yeah.
well, what it really is how do you scale that up? Could you
Yeah.
scale that up to the corporate level? Could I build relationships over the arc of someone's entire career, from the time they're in college to the time that they're an executive? And it doesn't matter that they're not qualified today, or that they had a terrible interview today, or that they don't have the skills to be a whatever at my company. I don't care. What I want to watch is how they develop. What are they interested in? And can I intercept them at the right time? So the infinity loop is this idea that nobody leaves. Now, they're not trapped. They have consent and, like GDP, like we're not saying we're like go outside of GDPR, far from it. Can you keep them interested and engage with your company for the full arc of their career? So they apply to a job, they come in, they enter a talent community, they're getting content that's important to them, and they're getting surfaced for jobs as they pop up every 6 months, year, getting recommended. They're having interaction and you watch as they develop. You get new resumes, they get new experience, they pop up for a new. Nobody is unqualified to be part of your talent network, because at some point they might be the right candidate. And if you already know who they are, and you know their interests and their abilities, and you know your opportunities, you can kind of make those connections. So that takes a lot of humans, but it also takes some technology to kind of make those connections at the right time.
I know Candidate ID, Adam Gordon's company, do that.
Yes, yeah. I love Adam Gordon. He's a really smart guy. We've talked to him a few times.
Yeah, cool. All right, so that's nearly us. I suppose couple of final questions. Who in the HR tech community inspires you?
So I don't know if you've heard, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. And
We're not in the middle. We're on the other side now. Come
we're
on.
Fair
Let's be
enough.
optimistic.
I love your optimism. Yes, we're on the tail end of this thing. So, I would actually give a shout out to our CEO and founder, Athena. I left a large enterprise in the middle of a pandemic to join a startup. And there's a few people that I would go jump on board with in the middle of all that uncertainty. And her focus on ethics, compliance, explainability, how we go make the world a better place, like legit, how do we go use this technology for good, is something that inspires me. And really, I've been at HiredScore now for about 4 months, and that's a big reason of why I joined, was that laser focus on being excellent at this thing. HiredScore is not trying to be an ATS. We're not a CRM. We're not an HCM. We're not trying to be kind of the kitchen sink that does a little bit of everything. All right. We want to be very good at this thing. And I find that very inspiring.
Very good. Give this man a raise, Athena. Tell me, what other companies out there in HR tech have your attention? When you look at it, you go, wow, you're solving a problem. You're tech for good in our space.
Yeah, so I will.
Drum roll.
So I will say, I'm probably not gonna satisfy your curiosity here, but I will say
your
that
interview here.
there's types of companies that I'm very interested in, and I love watching how they do this, right? So there's a couple companies that do assessments that are trying to understand more about the human and what the human is, and that are on that same focus as we are in trying to mitigate bias in the hiring process. So how you understand potential versus capability is a really interesting balance.
Super interesting.
Right? Yeah, like every position at your company has some sort of balance that you need to hit. I have a project that needs to get done in 6 weeks. I can't hire for potential. I need somebody that can walk in the door and produce results right now.
Yeah.
Whereas I have a role for someone coming right out of college, and I know they're not going to be very good at anything, but I know that they will be. So I am investing in their potential. Those are kind of the extreme ends of that.
Yeah.
Every other role is somewhere in between. And if we can kind of understand, get a clearer picture of what their capabilities are, what
Yeah.
their interests are, and what their potential is, I think you can unlock even further. You can help hiring managers see an even wider band of people who would be excellent at that job, so that, to your point earlier, you don't have to sacrifice quality to get diversity. And
Yesterday's interview was with Anne Fulton and at Fuel 50, and their product does just that, which I thought was fascinating. And then, but not on the assessment side. And then I have an interview next week with a company called Brick, and they do it on the assessment side. The technology in this space is absolutely blowing my mind. Having come from the agency world, we just don't have the same, like the same detail, like, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I would love to understand. So you were right earlier, where we primarily service, large enterprise, right? Like that you would have to be a large company to have enough data for HiredScore to really be effective for you. I am very interested, though, on a personal level, in how you enable those agency recruiters who are sort of, maybe you have some tools, but you don't necessarily have the infrastructure of, a Fortune 100 company, like backing you. So how could you go do this? How could you inject equity into the process while also being paid on commission, right? So
I haven't done the interview yet, but I've done the demo a couple of times, and the tool Brick, it does just that to a certain point. And I'm not going to do it justice. I'm not a details guy. My wife did the demo, and she's the brains. Okay, but essentially, think of like a Myers-Briggs on steroids, where the recruiter goes to the hiring manager and says, "Here's they discuss the position, but they do it from a technical standpoint." So like there's like a few different things that they can put. I want leadership at this. I want mathematical ability here. I want this. So they do it all from a testing procedure. And that then goes out. You do the advertisement and all the rest. I'm sure you have a different tool of doing the advertisement to make that non-biased. But when you get your shortlist, you blank the resumes, you get them to do the test, then you show the results to the hiring manager. So from an agency standpoint, you'd be able to do that as the recruiter to the hiring manager in a non-biased way that puts the ability and suitability of the person who deserves to get the job.
Yeah, and actually that's a really interesting point, because I think one of the things that I really want to help recruiters with too is I don't need them to be data scientists. I also don't need them to be psychologists. One of the challenges with a lot of these assessments out there is that they give some really important insight on these candidates, but as a recruiter, you're not necessarily like qualified nor equipped to talk about those in isolation. Like, oh, this person has a high level of conscientiousness, or they are like they are 5.5 on the disagreeable scale. Like, they're an ENTJ. Like, those things are important insights to those people. But the problem that I would love to solve is how do you blend those insights with what's on their resume, what's in the job description, what does your company need, to put them into a conversational packet that a recruiter can speak to confidently. Because as a recruiter, you've got the hardest job. Being a recruiter is like a salesperson but instead of selling aluminum, you're selling a person that also like has ulterior motives. Like you've got like this two-sided selling problem where
It's a double-sided marketplace, and everybody's trying to fall out with you. It's
yeah, it's such a challenge. So you need to be equipped with the right narrative about each of these people in a way that you can be confident when you talk. If you just sort of like throw stats over the fence,
yeah.
the manager goes, "Oh, okay, great. Well, do they know Java?"
Yeah,
like
no, I'll have to hook you up for a chat with Markellos from Brick, and
I
he'll
love,
go
yeah,
into he can go in you two can go into the detail on it.
love it, love
I
it.
suspect loads of founders would be listening to this and going, I need to talk to this guy. I have like everybody has things that they can solve in it. It's just getting into like how to do it with data and how to communicate all of that in a way that the layman can operate everything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's there's an expertise and there's a passion that I recruiters, every recruiter I talk to has that like, and it's like this is why I love talking to recruiters. It's that like it's that excitement that, oh, I just changed somebody's life. I
Yeah.
just gave them their dream job and they called me in tears, or 2 years later they still call me. It's like when you talk to like a heart surgeon that did a transplant and they talk about like somebody they saved and years later they're still in contact with that person. Like there's recruiters I know that are still in contact with people that they like changed their life, and I love that piece of it. And so like getting recruiters that those tools so they can do more of that, that is the thing that gets me excited.
So one last question. I know I said it was the last question before, but you're an interesting chap, so it puts me down rabbit holes. Um, if everybody's figured out the next big thing, right? Everybody you speak to, like, I've solved it, solved, I've solved this problem in the hiring or HR process.
Mhm.
Um, for those people who think that they've solved it, what what advice do you have to them if they're an early stage founder in the space? Because I think you've seen it from a macro perspective, and you've worked in a startup now, and you've seen it from what I think you've got like good 10 years of seeing what doesn't work and trying to change stuff. So I'm curious what you'd advise them.
Yeah. Um, that's such a good question. Um, Give me 1 second here. I would say so. Here's what doesn't work is, well, I'll answer it this way. There are a number of startups in the HR tech space that come into existence because of where the person ran into a frustration. So you see some startups that are like, because a recruiter had trouble finding good talent. So they got this idea of a search tool. And so what they go is they go build to their experience. That recruiter that starts that company,
Hmm.
if they can attract the right technical talent to their startup, they end up being able to connect with recruiters on a very fundamental level because they speak that language of recruiters. They understand the life and the struggle and the excitement of a recruiter and what's important to them. There is another class, or not a class, but like another group that are, maybe I was a hiring manager at a large company, like maybe a Fortune 100 company.
Yeah.
And I got frustrated because my recruiter wasn't bringing me the right talent. So I'm going to go build the tool that's going to help me get all the best software developers. Now, those have a different perspective. They're created from the perspective of the hiring manager, and they're fundamentally built on the idea that the recruiter is not doing a good job.
Yeah.
So then they go and they try to sell this thing to recruiting teams, and there's almost this derision of the recruiter that they're also trying to sell to. And that is a gap that those startups have to learn how to bridge. You cannot help somebody that you don't like.
Yeah.
And some of them do it. They do it very successfully. They're able to kind of like hop that bridge and really dive in and understand the recruiter. But if you can't do that, if you're seeing the recruiter as like an obstacle to engineer out of this process, I think you're going to have a really steep uphill battle.
Yeah.
You've got to build to what recruiters do best, and help them help them minimize the things that they don't like doing so that they can spend more time doing the things that they like. I think those startups and those companies tend to do much better in this space. Is it?
And that's bang on. That's us, Tyler. Thanks so much for your time today. You've been an awesome guest, blown my mind. I'm going to have a lie down and try and recover after this. But thanks so much, and I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah, I would love to. It was a pleasure. This was a lot of fun.